Are you satisfied with your understanding of sustainability? If you are not, imagine a journey together, a pluralistic one, with academia, innovators, startups, NGOs, all looking for solutions to the greatest challenge of our time. My name is Samuele Tini, and this is the Sustainability Journey. Welcome to another episode. Today, we are going to discuss the role of SMEs, the role of women and businesses, especially in the global south. And we will do it with an expert, somebody who is leading the green and inclusive value chains at the International Trade Center. I'm very pleased to have here a changemaker and a leader from our neighboring country, Uganda, Vanessa Erogbogbo. Thank you so much, Vanessa, for being here with us today.
Thank you very much, Samuele. It's a true pleasure to be here with you today. I'm really looking forward to this discussion.
Vanessa, before going into the topics and the discussion and how trade can also foster growth and sustainable development in our continent, we want to know a bit more about you. Who is Vanessa? What is your sustainability journey?
Samuele, that's a really interesting question. And I think we as human beings, as adults, are so much influenced by things that happened in our early childhood in a way that sometimes we don't realize. So I was born in Uganda in the mid-70s. And the first 2 decades of my life, Uganda was a country that was in civil war. But I was really fortunate to escape much of that. I spent my school days away in boarding school, much of it in Kenya, and eventually winding up at a school in Eswatini, used to be called Swaziland, Waterford Kamplaba United World College. And it was at Waterford where there was a confluence of my upbringing. I have very liberal parents who encouraged me to be curious, not to accept the status quo. I asked so many questions, and a school environment on the side of a beautiful hill in nature, in this beautiful small kingdom, environment that nurtured an ethos of openness and respect for nature and diversity. The school was founded in the early 60s, and the then king of Swaziland gave it this name, Kamplaba, and that name Kamplaba that stuck with me all my life. It was really defining for me. It was meant, we are all of one world. Wherever you are in the world, the earth doesn't distinguish who you are. You can live in it, whatever your color, religion, your race, there's no difference in who we are. And it was that foundation with that foundation, I entered the world of work, first in commercial banking, then in development finance, and then landing here in Geneva to work at the International Trade Center, where those values found a home in work. So I have a degree in engineering and MBA in business. I've always had this interest in trade. I'm from the global south. I have a personal, development is personal for me, countries moving up, in the world economically and people having dignified lives. And then I find myself with the opportunity to contribute to the greatest challenges, to bring that curiosity, that openness, that background in science and engineering, to helping solve some of the world's greatest crises. And, our Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, he said, we must lead, we must not make excuses. There's no waiting for others to move first. We have to go now. So I find myself not just the planet in general and people in general, but for my own 2 children, being privileged to contribute my skills and my knowledge here at ITC to creating solutions, to mobilizing the business community, to addressing our greatest challenges, the SDGs, climate and ecological crisis.
Vanessa, it's a story that we can see repeats itself. Many, and as you say, the early childhood is where we have nurtured and we have also understood this deep connection. And I really appreciate that this podcast there's no border. Everybody is on board because those are the problem of our species, the human species. So we need to work it together. And you are doing a wonderful job, and we want to understand a bit more the challenges and the opportunity that, and what are you create the impacts that are you creating at the International Trade Center. But before going maybe to discuss the business and the international trade and the role it can have for sustainable development, can you tell us, and for our audience, which might not be familiar with it, in a nutshell, what is the International Trade Center?
Who doesn't know the International Trade Center? We are a great agency. We're the joint it's the technical assistance agency of the United Nations and the World Trade Organization. This year is our 60th anniversary year. Actually, yesterday we had a great celebration. We were at the World Trade Organization celebrating, and we had so many stakeholders, businesses, SMEs, policymakers join us in celebrating 60 years. And I want to share a little bit where we came from. In 1964, Brazil, and the Brazilian ambassador spoke very well yesterday, Brazil felt that the GATT, which was what the WTO was then, was an agreement, the general agreement on tariffs and trade. At that time, Brazil put forward a motion because they felt that developing countries and the global south were at a disadvantage in this agreement and lacked the necessary information required to participate in international trade. So they proposed the establishment of the International Information Trade Center at that time, and that it would also benefit industrialized countries, because then if we had a center that was providing all this information on trade and supporting countries with export promotion, then that would mean that there wouldn't be this duplication of this type of work by countries individually. So that would save costs. And that's when the International Trade Center was born. It was born with a staff of only 4 employees and an annual budget of $50,000. And today we are over 850 personnel across the world, 95 staff from 95 countries, dedicated to supporting small businesses and developing countries to trade. Our vision is to leverage MSME trade for an inclusive, sustainable, and prosperous economy. Our mission hasn't changed very much, Samueli, but our work has evolved a lot. The landscape is far more complex. The issues related to participating in international trade are just more. It's no longer just about, traditional concepts of competitiveness. It's not just about quantity and price. It's also about quality. It's about standards. It's about social and environmental factors, consumers, countries, regulations want to know if you've committed any human rights violations in your production, the work conditions, the sustainability. And, we have been recognized as playing a significant role in this landscape through our focus on SMEs, because that provides, I would say, one of the biggest upsides for ensuring trade impact.
And it's really an important mission, and especially you said a key word, the focus on SMEs. And we know in Africa mainly, and we work also in my daily job fostering entrepreneurship, youth, and small and medium enterprise. So sometimes there's been a disconnect. So the SMEs and the production, but they are not able to get into the, let's say, the game of international trade. They don't know the rules. So what is the relationship between this international trade and SMEs that sometimes is complex, you have barriers, and which are the challenges and opportunities, especially for SMEs in emerging markets like ours in this scenario?
So I go back, it's fascinating. When I'm driving around and looking out of the window, I always laugh and say, literally every individual in Uganda is some form of SME or entrepreneur. Everyone is, hustling and doing some form of business. So indeed, it's an incredibly important sector in entrepreneurship and SMEs on the continent. It's you can't, if you've never been to Africa, you cannot imagine the amount of energy that goes into business. And, it's a challenge of jobs, especially for the youth on the continent, and entrepreneurship is for individuals to earn some sort of income. Now, when it comes to normal businesses, the relationship, indeed, as you said, is quite complex, and SME can face some important market access barriers. And one I mentioned when I talked about why ITC was founded in the first place was information gaps. So accessing information on which are the markets, what are the trends, what are the market requirements, what's the documentation I require to export. This can be quite challenging for small businesses. And then we have non-tariff barriers. Maybe requirements that an SME has to meet that aren't related to tariffs or taxes. And this disproportionately affects small businesses. So if you think about, let's say, documentation a small business has to complete to compliance with a quality standard, that might, be more difficult for them to complete. A large company might have a whole department dedicated to their international trade activities, but a small business may not. They may have the lower capacity also to address the complex evolving regulatory landscape. Today, we have a plethora, I will call it a spaghetti bowl of new market requirements related to ranging from and more and more on carbon content of your products. Again, I mentioned human rights, child labor, deforestation-free commodities. So you have this whole plethora, and it's not just in terms of the themes that they deal with, but each country seems to be developing their own view on these regulations. And then you also have the market with its own voluntary requirements, voluntary sustainability requirements, different sustainability schemes. Not just the complexity of compliance, but also the cost of compliance. Access to finance and access to trade finance, whether you're a domestic or exporting company. And then, climate change. When I joined ITC 13 years ago, and yes, environment was an issue, but today, increasingly, we are being requested for support on adaptation, support, SMEs actually manage the impacts that climate change is having on their businesses, which was not as much as it was when I joined ITC, it's a relatively short period of time to see such a big. The trade also enables transfer of knowledge, know-how, technologies. It can help businesses upgrade and move up the value chain. We know that companies that trade tend to offer better jobs, more stable jobs. And so it's a really important factor for sustainable development. There are many opportunities on the continent. For example, the AFCFTA, the Continental Free Trade Agreement, trade. Mm-hmm. There's a growing market for sustainable products.
Yeah.
Annually, it's growing. There's a growing interest in, let's say, niche or health products. Mm-hmm. So there's an opportunity there. Mm-hmm. And interestingly, sometimes these new regulatory requirements can also, whilst there's no arguing that they have their challenges, they can also offer opportunities. Recently, we hosted a discussion on deforestation-free value chains, and it was fascinating. There was a representative from a farmer cooperative from Uganda, talking about how they're preparing themselves to adhere to the new European Union's deforestation-free value chain regulation. The representative was saying that because they have to create profiles of the farmers and collect quite a lot of very specific data on the farmers. The farmers have been able to use that data to access formal financial services, because now they actually have a profile, they have a geolocation, they have all this information that's providing them with that. And beyond Uganda, in Asia as well, we're seeing a lot of new businesses, startups, focusing on technologies to support the green transition, right? So there are a lot of companies now. So this is creating a new market opportunity, also for youth, in developing new technologies that can support this transition. So I'd say
fantastic. No, it's really fascinating. And you see also when you shift the perspective, it's not just a challenge, but it can be also an opportunity. I really liked, especially I'm sure it will be on coffee, a cooperative of coffee or cocoa. I mean,
coffee, yes,
coffee.
absolutely. Yeah.
So, and then we have, since we are also doing some work here in Kenya in my job zone on coffee, that is also the big problem, but it's also the great opportunity also that is ahead of us. And I want to ask this question because I'm sure you are at the forefront of this transformation and turning challenges to opportunity. Like, what are the initiatives that at the ITC you are working to foster the participation of SMEs and even to increase, the sustainable value chains? That is your expertise and work.
Yes. We do a number of initiatives. We have some core areas of service. So, of course, SME competitiveness and capacity building is one. Then we, from our genesis, we have a whole area on business trade and market intelligence. Our market intelligence support is actually pretty world known. It's one of the biggest services that ITC provides and is used world over, that shows trade data, trade flows, etc. We work on the ecosystem, so working with institutions, strengthening business support institutions in the entrepreneurial and SME ecosystem, and then of course on the policy environment. But when it comes to sustainability, zoom into that, we have our executive director's big vision when she arrived. She wanted to place a spotlight on 4 core issues. And we call those moonshots in ITC. One is on digital, one is on youth, one is on women, and one is on green trade. And on green trade, the green moonshot focuses in 5 areas. We found, we went to the climate, we participated in the climate change conference, which is where, as you know, the commitment and the collaboration to take climate action really takes center stage. And we noticed that small businesses were not part of this story. Sure, there were large businesses there were parties, there was NGOs, but small businesses weren't part of this story. And we made it our job to bring that perspective of small businesses, because we know that if small businesses can be enabled to take climate action, that can make a huge contribution to achieving the climate goals. And we wanted to bring the perspective into that arena so that as negotiators are negotiating and making agreements, and there's discussions on climate finance, there's that understanding of how small businesses can contribute, where they fit in, where they need support, and so on. So this is one big area, which is really bringing the perspective of small businesses to the global arena. At the WTO, we bring small business perspective into the negotiations on the multilateral trading system and how that is going to work. And then the second area that we focus is on providing data and analysis evidence on SME challenges and opportunities. One of the big pieces, maybe a couple I would mention. One we've done on deforestation, free value chains. We actually, if you have a look on our website, intrasem.org, how different regulations can materialize in
Yeah.
different commodity producing countries.
Mhm.
And the second is on renewable energies and the opportunities for developing countries to deploy renewable energy systems. This is some of the type of work that we're doing, supporting, developing countries to look at they can use trade policy to enhance, to contribute to this green transition. Of course, climate action focused policies. The fourth area is on capacity building of SMEs, climate competitiveness. We call it climate competitiveness of SMEs. And we look at the risk for businesses, whether that's from the direct impacts of climate change or the impact of changing policies and helping SMEs vision through that, as well as opportunities. And there, as we discussed, there are many opportunities. One of the exciting areas of work that we launched at the COP in Dubai was an environmental footprint tracking tool and support, which allows SMEs to really understand the environmental footprint across 8 key areas: waste, water, energy, etc., and to start to develop a profile and information system, because as you may know, supply chains are increasingly requesting this information. I mentioned earlier that the landscape is becoming much more complex. So this type of support that we give to SMEs allows them to develop their profile, their footprint, understand where their gaps are, and start to improve their environmental performance. I mean, this is just one example. And finally, obviously, access to green finance, working with impact investors. If you allow me, I want to mention something that matters a lot to me and goes back to
Please.
who I am. Thank you. It goes back to who I am and where I come from. I don't believe that technocratic or technological solutions can do everything. And we, in our approach, have a deep belief in collaboration, partnership, and bottom-up approaches. And this is what we deploy in everything that we try to do. For example, through our work in agribusiness value chain, we actually call that alliances for action, where we work with the stakeholders to understand their challenges. We work with them to develop the solutions, and we deploy the solutions together with the stakeholders on the ground and actors across the value chain. So cocoa, for example, where we're working in Ghana, in West Africa. West Africa contributes 80% of the world's cocoa output, and we're working in West Africa with entities like the Kwapa Cocoa Farmers Union. And I mentioned this, I remembered yesterday, we had Solomon from Kwapa Cocoa Farmers Union here with us in Geneva, talking about the work that we're doing together to help them adopt dynamic agroforestry approaches to improve their productivity, increase their incomes in a bottom-up approach, partnering stakeholders like the Co-op supermarket, Chocolates Halba, to really ensure that livelihoods are improved, sustainability is improved, and all this through a model where the ownership is with the stakeholders and not with us, ITC. We are just the facilitator. And I think it's really important to make that point.
Wow, that is really a great lot of initiatives, and it's really important what you said, the work and that you are, and the example of the cocos, because that is also the approach that from the bottom up and the work that you are doing with the farmers and the SMEs, it really help them to achieve even more and more. And ongoing on that, usually one of the things that we have is important international trade. One of the discussions that usually are also here that and the disputes that are around also within our East African community. So we say that South-South trade is often more difficult or travel and journey because it's cumbersome. There is a lot of red tape, bureaucracy, and conflict. So how the ITC is playing a role to foster this huge and largely, I would say, untapped opportunity for South-South cooperation and trade and work, which could be a really an important engine for development.
Pardon me, hit a very important nail on the head, Samuele. And I think it's in our DNA, this South-South cooperation. We bring together many communities, even, picking up where I left off in the cocoa chain. Solomon was describing a journey that we facilitated for him and for Kwapa Cocoa Farmers Union, where they visited some facilities in Bolivia. We arranged for them to visit some facilities in Bolivia and to learn how in Bolivia they are growing cocoa in its natural environment in the forest and bringing those practices across to Ghana. For example, we have a network of green hubs where we work with institutions to help them, develop their competencies in sustainability and therefore be able to help the businesses that they work with. And, these institutions span from Peru to Vietnam, to Ghana, to Kenya, to Nepal. And, we bring them together as a network to share experiences, to learn, to exchange. I mean, this is very much a part of the work that we do, bringing people together to learn, exchange, to dialogue, to foster trust. I think that's what's going to help us a lot: trust, collaboration, and understanding. We also have some programs that are specifically built around increasing trade. So, for example, we've had a program supporting trade between India and East Africa. And there, we had the exchange of technologies, Indian investment across Rwanda, Uganda, Kenya, Ethiopia. Some of the products that we covered were, chilies, ginger, and others. So I couldn't agree more with you. And you know what, Samuele? Some of these technologies as well tend to be even more appropriate. The South-South exchange of technologies can be even more appropriate. This is the way of the world. And also, if I may conclude with, these are the fastest growing populations. These are the fastest growing economies. These are the fastest growing markets. Challenge, but also there's a huge opportunity ahead of us.
And I totally agree with you. I've been on the continent for the past 20 years and planning to stay, a bit more. You never know in life, but we have life expectancies going up, so we hope to reach another maybe 60 or 80 years here on the continent. So it's really important, and we will touch about that, the African century that has been discussed. I want to touch another point before going to that discussion. It's about the role of women, because there is a largely untapped engine that is, especially for entrepreneurship, that can be, but I meet every day more and more women that are doing wonderful job. They are creating innovative startups. Some they've come to the articles we write, some they are come to the podcast, and they're really transforming community, solving social problems, and also creating value. I want to ask, what is the role of ITC? How you are also fostering, as a woman, also as a woman leader, women-led businesses, and especially in our context?
ITC's work on women has been one of the most exciting areas that we have worked in. And, we did some research. I think that was back in 2013. And we did surveys of 40,000 businesses across the world and found that only 1 in 5 exporting companies was women-led. And, we had initiatives on women in trade at the time, But we took a decision to really scale up what we were doing, and we set up the She Trades initiative. And She Trades, I'm very proud to have been at the lead of creating the She Trades initiative. And She Trades, with colleagues and then executive director, we set out to connect 1 million women to markets at that time. That was in 2015. We said we're going to connect 1 million women to markets by 2020. But actually, looking back, yes, we did a lot of great work. We created a movement. We worked with millions of women entrepreneurs. But looking back, I would say the most important thing that we did was a paradigm shift in a way. It was spearheading the Buenos Aires Declaration, which was a declaration that was adopted at the World Trade Ministerial Conference in Buenos Aires back in 2017. And that really brought the issue of women in trade into the center of the multilateral trading system discussion. And subsequently, there was the establishment of an informal working group on women in trade. And there's a gender focal point at the World Trade Organization. If you listen to the Director General, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, this is, she's really also very supportive of this. And recently, together with my executive director, Pamela Coke Hamilton, she is such a champion as well. We've launched a new fund for women in the digital economy. So just safe to say that this is an area that ITC is really championing, launching the fund jointly with the World Trade Organization. We are also promoting, we're spearheading public procurement and creating opportunities for women through government contracts. We have a network of over 200 partners around the world, including partners UPS and Maersk and Visa, and MasterCard Foundation, working together to capacitate women entrepreneurs and create new opportunities for them. So, and then of course, on policies as well, we have a very strong work stream on policies, and we developed a global methodology and approach for policymakers to look at how well the policies are supporting women to trade, and to chart out strategies on to improve it's called She Trades Outlook. So, this is an area that's really a strong area for ITC.
So you are doing, it's the 1 million and even more now, the policy, the She Trades, you're really at the forefront of transformation in the continent, and I think beyond, in all the global south, to really have women, putting women on the driving seat as well.
Absolutely. And for the first time in the history of the world, we have 3 great women at the helm of the three trade organizations. Pamela Coke Hamilton here at the International Trade Center, and Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala at the World Trade Organization, and Rebecca Greenspan at United Nations Trade and Development UNCTAD. So it's an exciting moment.
And it's really a moment, as you say, of transformation and work. And it is great to see women leaders. And we'll try to connect even with more of them and discuss also and letting them on the podcast. And in this journey of transformation, we also, let's say, the global south and Africa, where we live. It's now the continent where growth is happening. As I said before, the IMF said this is the African century, population is growing. So what is your view as a leader? How the ITC and especially trade can, and which role also the SMEs and the enterprise they can play in this transformation? How they can serve the needs of a growing and more middle class coming into the market in this area, notwithstanding also the limits of our planet. So how we can have growth on one side, the importance of consuming more and not having needs that are important to deliver, but also the sustainability. How the ITC is working on all of those different and difficult, let's just say, problems.
I wish I had the silver bullet.
Silver bullet.
Yeah, for this very complex challenge. But Samuela, I'm a perennial optimist. And I would say the way we see it is two things. It's not just about growth, but it's about value and adding value and quality. And for us, it's really about helping businesses on the continent transition into value addition. Working with businesses. We have Monica also from Ghana working in cocoa. She has a chocolate factory. So it's about helping her improve her quality, helping her on her packaging, helping her, access finance for expansion. It's about value addition on the continent. It's about, manufacturing. We recently did a study, a big value chain study of the continent to identify the value chains that held the most promise continent, and pharmaceuticals, auto industry, baby food was one of the interesting value chains. So it's really looking at where the continent can do the manufacturing value addition. The second is the green transition. There are so many jobs to be created. Kenya, a country whose electricity grid is 90% reliant on renewables. I mean, this, on a global level is impressive. Kenya hosts the continent's largest wind turbine generation facility, Lake Turkana, in Lake Turkana. And when you look into what it took to set that up, the number of jobs that created in the community, and the general upgrading of conditions in the community, there are opportunities out of the green transition. Africa is a continent that has potential for renewables production, and it also has high potential, as a source for many of the critical raw materials required for the green transition. So it's for our leaders and for our policymakers to really think about how we can ensure that the continent is proactive in realizing the benefits of trade in those critical raw materials, and that we avoid a commodities trajectory, right? And I think it's a negotiation.
Yes.
And it's a collaboration, it's a partnership. We all need each other. We all need to work hand in hand to develop these value chains and to create those opportunities for the small businesses and the communities that are, that are part of all regions where all these assets are. Yeah, I mean, I'd say those would be the two areas of focus: the value addition story and the green transition story.
And it's a really interesting part and vision, and I'm really sure that also working every day, we see that part, and we are trying to foster more value addition work, and there is a huge potential. So we don't look also at the crisis, but also at the positive sides on how we can leapfrog in a way, also development, as you say, in transition, in the green economy. It's really a continent where, let's say, we have the future ahead of us. It's really promising. And
it's a happy continent,
Yeah.
I think people don't realize it's a place where there's a lot of happiness as well. And let's capture some of that energy and happiness. And I'm hopeful that we
will do well. No. We are up, and this is the spirits that we need to have, happiness, and this is also the great quest of also of humanity, being happy, which is not about material, but that is also, I mean, is another thing, another conversation about this. The crisis also, that especially in the global north, is there a big material viability, but then decreasing happiness. That is also important to discuss that. And we would like to tap on your wisdom and your leadership for a lot of that, but we are also the time, and we are also conscious of your time. But we want to tap again and ask you our last question. As Vanessa, as you are a leader, you are there at the ITC, you are overseeing transformations all over the country, all over the world. So for people like us, like me, and which are down here on the earth, so the bottom, let's say, in a way of the pyramid, so we can tell us which are the tips you can share with us as an entrepreneur, especially here in the global south, what we can do to navigate this complexity and really try to achieve more.
So actually, I am going to share what I have learned from the best entrepreneurs, what I see them do. Number one, your network is your net worth. 1,000%. Your network is your net worth. So you need to get out there, build your local network, build your national network, join a business support organization, join a chamber of commerce, because that's where these opportunities come. An organization like ITC may not necessarily look for the individual entrepreneur, but will go through, the local institutions. The second one is stay informed. Stay informed about, regulations, standards, trade information. ITC does a great job, but there are others as well that, provide regular information about trade and trade trends. And the third is, learning and adapting, and, being agile, being able to shift and change. We saw during COVID, entrepreneurs who were able to adapt and shift, what they were producing, how they were producing, and survive through that. So I would say those three things: network, information, and adaptation.
Fantastic, Vanessa. It's really important. And it was really a pleasure and an honor having you here on the podcast. And I'm sure we will even meet more and discuss even more your achievement and the great work you are doing. So thank you so much, Vanessa.
Samuel, thank you so much too. The privilege was mine.
Are you satisfied after this wonderful episode? Let's continue together our sustainability journey.